Uncharted. Going into Uncharted, what did you expect?
I expected to actually be a really good movie, and it came out to be about average.
Going into this, I didn't really have too many expectations. I knew it was based on a popular video game, but basically I'm going into this knowing it's an action-adventure movie and it stars Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Two pretty charismatic actors. They don't necessarily fill the roles of the video game characters, but I don't really know too much because I barely played the game at all. I probably watched my brother play it for like maybe 20 minutes tops. So that's my extensive knowledge of the Uncharted franchise.
It was kind of boring for it being an action movie, supposedly. I mean, there's no really action.
There was action in it. There was some action. It wasn't done like on a spectacular level.
He got the airplane, and he flies out of the airplane, and then he becomes Spider-Man in a couple of scenes, and I'm like, you know what, yeah, he's Spider-Man.
But he's Nathan Drake. Going into this, I expected it to just be like action-packed. Once this movie ends, I was like, okay, so that was the movie. That was the whole movie. So that was the movie. It made sense that it ended where it ended, but at the same time, nothing really happens in the movie other than some betrayals and stuff, but you can see those coming a mile away, and even when they happen, you're just kind of frustrated with it, like, really? We're doing that again? And there's a certain villain in this movie that is set up to be the villain, and then they just kind of decide, nope, not the villain. Kind of bothered me the way they did it. Kind of just, like, they threw him away in the garbage, and it was like, alright, well, then what the hell was the point of that?
The part when they kill the bad guy, when they kill him, it was not realistic at all. I mean, if you watch any other movie, they get slit across the throat. There's basically a gallon of blood on the floor, and it looked like he had a paper cut. I think they could have done something with that where they actually fight each other and not her just take her little velociraptor knife and just go like that.
It was basically Jurassic Park when he's like cut on the little
he's
like touches him with the claw.
Cut here, and they'll cut here, and they'll cut here.
Basically that, but with the throat. And it was just one cut.
And no blood.
Tom Holland is pretty charismatic, as we know, because he's played Spider-Man. But here, he is definitely charismatic, but you don't really care because the lines that they've written for him aren't funny. Like, none of the movie is really funny, other than just a couple scenes where you're like, how is this a real movie? One of the big fight sequences takes place in a Papa John's. And that's the joke. Mark Wahlberg walks in and is like, I'm literally in a Papa John's right now. And it's just, you're kind of in the theater, you're like, this is a movie! Tom Holland and the woman in this movie, they're trying to get out of their trap, and then they're cutting back and forth between them and Mark Wahlberg fighting somebody in this Papa John's. The whole time you're like, yeah, really fighting in a Papa John's right now.
They had that one scene where they're in that party or whatever.
Yeah, but like that one's kind of fun, and it's like not really like a corporate entity where it's like just like a setting where they're like at a bar. So, I mean, I could kind of see that as being like a fun little set piece. And it wasn't that bad of a set piece because they kind of set up Tom Holland being a bartender and he, knows all these drinks and stuff. And so he's like kind of trash talking the villain.
That part was kind of weird. And he was sitting there talking to the girl like, yeah, you know what? I know everything. And actually, he does not know everything because he is not Google or Spider-Man.
But he knows that the cigarette was invented by Antonio Cigaretti. Wait, what?
That's actually true. I looked it up.
But the whole time when he's bartending and stuff, it just made me really want to watch Cocktail with Tom Cruise. And then that made me think, well, this movie would be more fun if they had like a Tom Cruise type instead of a little kid Tom Holland in this big adventure movie. And I know that's one of people's quibbles with the fact that they cast him in this role of Nathan Drake. I don't know crap about Nathan Drake, but just as a movie, I would kind of rather there be like a badass lead in one of these movies. And they tried to pretend like having Mark Wahlberg be his sidekick makes up for that. But Mark Wahlberg in this movie the whole time is just like, yeah, I'm in this movie, and I talk like this.
Yeah, he doesn't do much at all.
Like, Mark Wahlberg can be good in other movies, and he's a fun, obviously, blockbuster kind of actor. Kind of does similar stuff in every movie, but at the same time, he's had many really good performances. But in this one, he just kind of sleepwalks through it. And you're just supposed to be like, oh, this character is cool because it's Mark Wahlberg.
He just basically walks around Tom Holland and does the stuff with him.
Yeah.
And then Tom Holland does all the action stuff. Especially during the scene when they're in the auction. He just stands around, doesn't do nothing, and then you have Tom Holland flying above the ceiling. They were trying to do something. I was like, yeah, he's Spider-Man, so they're trying to make him swing around these lights.
And there's a certain plot device that they used where Mark Wahlberg isn't in it for a decent chunk in the middle. And then he just all of a sudden shows up at the end, and we're supposed to be like, oh, wow, he's finally back. I wonder what he was doing the whole time. But in reality, you're just like, oh, yeah, this is the next scene in the movie.
The only thing he's got going for him is he is way better looking than Tom Holland. I just gotta point that out there to all the ladies. Tom Holland is not that good looking. He is just Spider-Man. That is it. Mark Wahlberg, I'm not gonna get into that subject, but just know it. Mark Wahlberg is better looking.
Let's see Tom Holland.
Talk to a stuffed animal.
Let's see Tom Holland's range with
Nah,
that.
can't do that. Nope.
It wasn't that bad. It was just like perfectly average, knew what you were going to get, but there weren't any real wow set pieces where you kind of walk out and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that one part. Yeah, that was fun. The final action stuff is kind of cool, but mostly on paper. Whenever somebody says to you, yeah, they literally have helicopters and they pick up these pirate ships and they fly around with these pirate ships on cranes, you're thinking, holy shit, that sounds awesome. And it was cool, but the scenes aren't really crafted in any way where you're like, yeah, I can feel the craziness of this and like the scale of this, and like the hand-to-hand combat isn't fantastic or anything. But in reality, you don't really get many of these movies anymore with action adventure stuff like that. So I didn't mind the overall product too much just because these movies aren't really getting pumped out as much as some other movies. So overall, I didn't really mind it. It wasn't really that bad. It's just sort of jarring. A couple places with dialogue and a couple scenes they'll reference stuff that doesn't even make sense in the setting of this kind of genre-based movie where it's like an action-adventure kind of Indiana Jones thing. They make jokes about Mark Wahlberg having Tinder open on his phone, and you're just like, okay, somebody knows what Tinder is. Why? It added absolutely nothing to the movie. But then they kind of have this whole backstory involving Tom Holland's Nathan Drake and his brother. And I don't, maybe this is something from the games, but the way it comes off here, it was kind of like boring, and you're just kind of like, I don't really care. I know you're trying to give me something to where I'm supposed to care about the character, but it doesn't really accomplish that. And they keep bringing it back up throughout the whole movie. And at that point, you're just like, I don't really care. Just make actual jokes, grab the stuff, have action set pieces, and get me out of here with a good time.
I just feel like they could have done a whole lot more just with that whole helicopter scene. It's like, I don't think they did much. They flew around, and Mark Wahlberg tried to go another route, trying to get away from them, but I think they could have done something where they had machine guns on the helicopters and they start shooting at each other. It had actually a cool effect doing that. Or they could have done something where they honestly had Johnny Depp just come in and be Jack Sparrow one last time. I mean, they could have had Johnny Depp swing in as Jack Sparrow, and he just starts obliterating everyone else. They starts fighting with Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland.
Which would have made total sense and not at all been a weird thing for them to do in the movie.
It wouldn't have. Like, if I would have wrote the movie, I would have done it.
Hollywood, let high schoolers write your movies. Kendal, what do you rate Uncharted overall?
Yeah, I had it at a 6.5 yesterday. I'm bumming down to a 6. I just thought about it a little bit more. I was like, yeah, they could have done a whole lot better, so I bumped it down to a 6.
The kind of movie that it is, and the fact that it is still a blockbuster movie starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, even though Mark Wahlberg isn't the best in this. Maybe it's like a 5 out of 10, so that's why I'm going with 5 out of 10. It's no Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider. It's kind of similar in that vein, but, you know, Angelina Jolie is cooler than Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. So, yeah.
I don't know about that one.
2000 whatever Angelina Jolie is cooler than 2022 Mark Wahlberg. Yes.
Not possible.
Did you see the movie where he didn't do anything?
Nope, never saw it.
It was called Uncharted, and it's out in theaters now. But